that I'd never heard before. Would you like me to sing it? Okay, here it goes. Jaya Raja Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Raja Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Banachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Gaur Nitai, Jai Krishna Balaram, Jai Radha and Jai Sundar. So today, for the invocation, we have a choice for you. And each one of you is going to actually get your choice. The choice for the invocation can either be the first few words of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the first few words of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, or the mantra that Dhruva Maharaj chanted in the forest. You get a choice of one of those three. All right? Here it goes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Did everyone get their choice for an invocation? Was the same invocation the same for all of those? I did that to set the mood. This is how Krishna can do one thing, and he can fulfill many purposes and give many different people what they need and what they want, all with the same purpose. Just like with that mantra, whether you wanted to hear the words of Dhruva Maharaj, the first few words of the first canto, the first few words of the second canto, you got that. So today, we will start with a verse that's in the 10th canto, 24th chapter, 14th verse. Let me put it up close here. Are you ready? Are the words up there? Does it start with asti? No. It's supposed to be asti. No, it's supposed to be 24th chapter, 14th verse. It's what? It's not there. That's the verse I'm supposed to lecture on. You lectured on verse 13 yesterday, correct? And isn't 14 after 13? You need to change that. It's 10, 24, 14. Because 14 comes after 13, at least in this book. It's not there. Well, can you try to follow along? Yes. Okay. Asti. Chet. īśvaraḥ. Kaścit. phala-rūpī anya-karmaṇām kartāraṁ bhajate so pi na hi akartuḥ prabhur hi sa. Can you put it up there for them? It's the next verse after yesterday. It's here in the book. So, all right, see if you can follow. Asti ched īśvaraḥ kaścit phala-rūpī anya-karmaṇām kartāraṁ bhajate sopi nahi akartuḥ prabhur hi sa. Asti ched īśvaraḥ kaścit phala-rūpī anya-karmaṇām kartāraṁ bhajate sopi nahi akartuḥ prabhur hi sa. Asti ched īśvaraḥ kaścit phala-rūpī anya-karmaṇām kartāraṁ bhajate sopi nahi akartuḥ prabhur hi sa. Repeat. Anyone can repeat? No one? Late. Asti kaścit.
phala-rūpī anya-karmaṇām kartāraṁ bhajate sopi nahi akartuḥ prabhur hi sa.
Ladies. Others? Okay, we will read the word for word meaning. Asti, there is. Chet, if hypothetically. īśvaraḥ, a supreme controller. Kaścit, someone. phala-rūpī, serving to award fruitive results. Anya-karmaṇām, of the activities of other persons. Kartāraṁ, the performer of activity. Bhajate, depends upon. Sa, he. Api, even. Na, not. He, after all. Akartuḥ, of one who performs no activity. Prabhuḥ, the master. He, certainly. Sa, he. Translation. Even if there is a supreme controller who awards all others the results of their activities, he must depend upon a performer's engaging in activity. After all, there is no question of being the bestower of fruitive results unless fruitive activities have actually been performed. Okay, we'll read that repetitively here. Put it up here? Okay. Even if there is that better? Even if there is a supreme controller who awards all others the results of their activities, he must also depend upon a performer's engaging in activity. After all, there is no question of being the bestower of fruitive results unless fruitive activities have actually been performed. Purport by the disciples and followers of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Here, Lord Krishna argues that if there is a supreme controller, he must depend on the performance of activity to reciprocate with, and must therefore also be subject to the laws of karma. Being obliged to award happiness and distress to conditioned souls according to the laws of good and evil. This superficial argument neglects the obvious point that the laws of nature that prescribe the good and bad results of pious and impious acts are themselves creations of the all-good Supreme Lord. Being the creator and sustainer of these laws, the Lord is not subject to them. Furthermore, the Lord is not dependent on the work of conditioned souls, since he is satisfied and complete within himself. Out of his all-merciful nature, he awards the results appropriate to our activities. That which we call destiny, fate, or karma is an elaborate and subtle system of rewards and punishments meant for gradually encouraging conditioned souls to evolve to the stage of perfect consciousness, which is their original constitutional nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has so dexterously formulated and applied the laws of material nature governing punishment and reward for human behavior that the living being is discouraged from sin and encouraged towards goodness without suffering any insignificant interference with his free will as an eternal soul. In contrast to the material nature, the Lord exhibits his essential nature in the spiritual world, where he reciprocates the eternal love of his pure devotees. Such loving affairs are based completely on mutual freedom of the Lord and his devotees, not on a mechanical reciprocity of coinciding selfish interests. The Supreme Lord, assisted by his pure devotees, repeatedly offers the conditioned souls of this world the opportunity to give up their bizarre attempt at exploiting the material nature and go back to home, back to Godhead, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Considering all these points, the atheistic arguments given here by Lord Krishna in a playful mood are not taken seriously. There's an interesting point here that we look. Lord Krishna is speaking to the inhabitants of Vrindavan. He's only 7 years old, and he's speaking such high philosophy. This seems to be quite a contradiction. How can he be a child and yet speaking high philosophy? This is something we're all subject to, the law of contradiction. Remind me, when I ask you to remind me of something, we will discuss the law of contradiction, wondering how Krishna can get around this law of contradiction. There may be one riddle, we will say, see who can get this riddle. This riddle will help us understand what something is. This thing, it's something rich people don't need it, poor people have it, and God can't do it. What is it? If you think really hard on any one of those three, you will get it. Something, what is it rich people don't need it. What is it rich people don't need? What do poor people have? And what is there God can't do? Who has an answer? What is it?
Nothing.
Nothing. What do rich people need? They need nothing. What do poor people have? They have nothing. What is there God can't do? There is nothing God can't do. So that kind of sets the mood why he is not subject to the same laws we are. We try to get around these laws of contradiction and at the same time try to make Krishna subject to these laws. But we will discuss how Krishna goes through the various pastimes to show how he's not, how he can do several things at once. Just like when we had the invocation. We had one invocation, but it was the first 3 words of the first canto, first 3 words of the second canto, and the mantra that Dhruva Maharaj chanted in the forest. If we can, I'd like to read verse 13 and 14, just for us to consider for a minute. In verse 13, Krishna said, "It is by the force of karma that a living entity takes birth. It is by karma alone that he meets his destruction. His happiness and distress, fear and sense of security all arise from the effects of karma." Today's verse 14. "Even if there is some supreme controller who awards all others the results of their activities, he must also depend upon a performer's engaging in activity. After all, there is no question of being the bestower of fruitive results unless fruitive activities have actually been performed." Are these statements made by Krishna at least partially true? Are we affected? Karma in, karma out. Like they say with the computer, garbage goes in, garbage goes out. But I try to put Krishna conscious knowledge in, so Krishna conscious knowledge will come out, because you don't need any more garbage. So, is it not true that the karmic activities we perform bring our results? Is it not true that why would God be reciprocating with people who haven't performed an action? In the 13th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, entitled Nature, Enjoyer, and Consciousness, Krishna describes that there are 4 factors that affect every activity. There's the place of action, there's the doer, there's the senses, and ultimately there is the endeavor. Do these 4 things affect actions? Is it true? Yes, it is true. So the statements that Krishna said are true, and those 4 verses that we discussed from the 13th chapter, they're also true. But are they the only things that are true? Is it the whole truth? No. Just like with those 4 factors. What happens with that? Let's take World War II. The Nazis were 30 miles outside of Moscow. They had all the best equipment. It was only November 7th. Winter couldn't come for another month and a half. All the 4 factors were in order. Yet, somehow or other, they lost the battle. What happened? What was the factor they hadn't noticed? Are there 4 factors in every action? Are there? Is there possibly a 5th one?
Yes.
Can Krishna make the difficult things easy and the easy things difficult?
Yes.
In that battle for Moscow, the winter wouldn't come for a month and a half. But could Krishna make the winter come early? You know what's the proof he could do it? He did it. When something happens, that's proof that it's possible. Once it happens, you can't argue that it's not possible. So Krishna is the fifth factor. He can override those activities. Of course, we should be careful to not be like some Christians say, well, it doesn't matter what I do. I can do all kinds of bad things. I don't believe in karma. I just ask Jesus to forgive me. So the one person asked the Christian boy, he says, where's the money you owe me? He says, well, I asked Jesus to forgive me. And he said, well, you should have borrowed it from Jesus then. So we can't just do the actions and expect Krishna to forgive us. But Krishna can override these actions because he is not subject to this law of contradiction. I covered my head up because it's just recently shaved. I don't want it to burn. So the law of contradiction is this. If I'm young, I can't be old. If I'm inside, I can't be outside. If it's day, it can't be night. If I'm a man, I can't be a beast. If I'm a beast, I can't be a man. If I'm in India, I can't be in America. You can't be both. If I'm a man, I can't be a woman. If you're a woman, you can't be a man. This is the law of contradiction, which we try to get around. We try to think that, yes, I won't become old. People spend, let's say in India they spend $11 billion a year on cosmetics. That's 88 billion rupees. And let's say that they spend 49 billion a year on cosmetics in America to stay young. Is that a good guess? No, it's not. I looked it up. It's the actual numbers. So, is that a lot of money? 11 billion, 88 billion rupees for the cosmetics. Does it work? If you put lipstick on a pig, do you get a beautiful woman, or you just have lipstick on a pig? So that is what decorating this material body is like. But we're always thinking, maybe God is subject to these contradictions, and maybe I can get around them. Hiranyakashipu figured out how to get around these contradictions. Because after his austerities, Brahma appeared before him and says, what benediction do you want? He says, I want to be immortal. Brahma says, I can't do that. So Hiranyakashipu figured a way around these contradictions so he become immortal. He says, all right, I don't want to be killed by a man or a beast. I don't want to be killed inside or outside. I don't want to be killed in the land or the air. I don't want to be killed in the day or the night. So he's by anything live or dead. So now he's figured his way around those. He's covered all the bases. There's nothing that any of us could do that would fulfill those conditions, is there? So he was able to get around that and not get killed, right? Is that how the story ends? No, because Krishna is not subject to these. He could appear as a half lion, half man. He grabbed him in the dusk, not the day or the night. He killed him on the doorstep, so it wasn't inside or outside. He wasn't the man or the beast. He killed him with his nails, so he wasn't alive. It wasn't alive or dead that killed him. So he was not able to get around this. We find in the pastimes of Krishna, quite often the residents of Vrindavan are able to reconcile these because they are wondering, is Krishna God or is he a cowherd boy? When Krishna was dancing on the Kaliya serpent, in one sense, they're thinking they need to save him. In another, they're also praying to Krishna for protection. And when the fire came, they were thinking, oh, we need to save Krishna. But Krishna save us from the fire. So they seem to be able to reconcile this. Now, Lord Brahma, he's the first person in creation. He should be able to figure out things better than we can, because after all, 4 heads are better than 1, aren't they? So Brahma was watching Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And he saw that Krishna came out as a cowherd boy, and he would blow the buffalo horn, and all the cowherd boys would get together, and they would go out to take the calves out to the field, and they were playing, and they would take the lunch boxes from each other and throw them to another one. And they came upon this big snake, the Aghasura demon. And the demigods are thinking, oh no, what will happen now? So the cowherd boys went inside, and little Krishna went inside, the big snake, because he's little. Now, according to the law of contradiction, you can't be small and big. You have to be one or the other. So Krishna's inside, Aghasura shut his mouth. But what happened? Little Krishna could become big. He expanded himself so big that this snake could not survive, and he choked, and his mouth opened, and Krishna and the cowherd boys came out, and his soul came out of his body and merged into Krishna's body. So Brahma's looking at this and thinking, now, this is a bit perplexing. If he's a cowherd boy, he can't be God. And if he's God, he can't be a cowherd boy, can he? Because after all, we only know our own experience. We know these contradictions. If we're old, we can't be young. Even with that large amount of money spent on cosmetics, we don't look young. We just don't look quite as old. So it doesn't work. So he's wondering, how is this possible? So he played a trick on Krishna. When Krishna he found a spot by the Jamuna River, and after the Aghasura demon, and he said, look at this spot. This spot has a babbling brook, and you can hear the bees buzzing, and the peacocks are cooing, and the birds are chirping, and you can smell the fragrance of the mogra flowers and the jasmine flowers, and you can hear the leaves whistle in the wind. So they all came with their lunch, and some of them put them on logs, and some of them put it on wood chips, some on leaves, and some on sand, and they all put Krishna in the center. He was the whirl of the lotus, and they were so intent on Krishna that they forgot about everything else. All of a sudden they looked up, and all the cowherd boys, all the calves were gone. So Krishna said, don't you worry about this. I will go look for the calves. And he's going around looking for the calves. Now Brahma had played the trick of taking the calves. And when Krishna was looking for the calves, he hid the cowherd boys in a cave. And Krishna's looking around wondering where they are. Because if someone played a trick on you and you have a good counter trick, what helps to make the counter trick work well? Make them think that it's working. So Brahma's looking at him. He looks confused. My trick is working. So Brahma tricks Krishna. In his minds, all four of them, he had tricked Krishna. Because he could, while he was looking for the calves, Krishna hid the cows. So now that they're gone, Krishna can't do anything else, because if he's in one place, he can't be in several. But he expanded into all the calves and the cowherd boys. Someone said, can you explain exactly how he did this? No, I can't. That's beyond my pay grade. Now, Krishna did explain to someone else later how he did this. Now, who did he explain that to? Who was it? Balaram. Because Balaram is an expansion of Krishna. He can understand many things that we are not capable of. So he explained it to Balaram. So then, when Brahma came back, he was totally shocked that Krishna was playing with cows and cowherd boys, and he went and looked in the cave and saw that they were all in the cave, but yet they were there, and he was so perplexed. Of course, it's a longer story, but we won't tell the whole story today. And he was so perplexed, and then Krishna showed that the calves and the boys were all expansions of Narayan, because Brahma worships Narayan. And so he fell down like a stick, a dandavat, and offered his obeisances. So he thought that Krishna was subject to these laws of contradiction. He was confused. So later Brahma writes something that explains something about how Krishna can perform his pastimes and not be subject to these contradictions. The verse in Brahma Samhita goes like this: Advaitam achyutam anadyam ananta-rūpam adyam paranam purusham navajovanamscha vedeshu durlabha adurlabha bhakto govindam adiprusham tamaham bhajami. Krishna is Advaita, he's non-dual. He's achyuta, he's infallible. He is ananta-rūpam, he's existing in unlimited forms. He is adyam paranam purusham, the oldest person in creation. So is God painted as an old person? Is he? Is it? Where is God painted as an old person? Where? In the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo paints God as an old man with a gray beard. But if you're God, why would you want to be an old man? Now here's the trick Krishna does that we try to get. He is Adyam Puranam Purusham, the oldest person in creation, and yet he is Navajovanamscha, always appearing as a fresh youth. Boy, now that's a pretty good trick. We try that, but it does not work. He is the oldest person in creation, and yet he's always appearing as a fresh youth. This is why he is difficult to understand by studying the Vedas, but easy to understand for someone who is his devotee. So these things are described. Rupa Goswami helps us in the book Bhakti Rasmita Sindhu, and Prabhupada translates this as the nectar of devotion. And in this, he explains that there's 50 qualities that we have in partial that God has in full. Now I'm going to name some qualities, special qualities of God in his absolute nature. Now you raise your hand if you have these qualities. Supreme Controller. No one? All cognizant. Ever fresh? No, changeless? Have a body that's eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss? All mystic perfections? All yogic potencies? Do universes come out from your body? Not just universes, but innumerable universes. How about one? Does anybody have one universe? Stuff comes out of your body, but it's not a universe. Are you the source of all incarnations? The attractor of all liberated souls? And give salvation to the enemies you kill. Don't try that one. Some people go crazy and they think that they are giving salvation to people they kill, but this is not actually possible, and it's a crime that you will go to prison or be executed for. So we don't try to imitate Krishna, we just try to serve Krishna. So God has these big absolute qualities. And because the contradiction, you're either relative, like a friend, or just a person, or you have these big absolute qualities. Krishna couldn't have these absolute qualities and have relative loving qualities also, could he? Just so happens he does. Because Krishna has some extra qualities that show it's kind of like something is special. Tenacity means that, like if a metal is very strong, but it also bends, it has tenacity. Because if you're flexible and strong at the same time, these two qualities together even make it more sweet and more special. So Krishna has these absolute qualities. He has some special qualities that are very relative qualities that he exhibits in the form of Krishna. The first one is called Lila Madhuri, which means he has the most wonderful, loving pastimes with his devotees. Like we read about when the cowherd boys go out with Krishna and they herd cows together. The gopis dance with Krishna. The parents think of Krishna as friend, as their child. So that brings the second quality called Lila Madhuri, that the very sweet pastimes of love. Because even though to some degree these devotees know Krishna is God, they forget about it because of their overwhelming desire to think of Krishna as either their master or Krishna as their friend, the cowherd boys. There's different kinds of cowherd boys. Some are somewhat servitude to Krishna. Some of them are very straight up friendship, and some of them give advice to Krishna. And then the ones who are parents of Krishna or of the age of parents, they think of Krishna as their child. When Mother Yasoda heard that Krishna had eaten dirt, she said, "Open your mouth." And Krishna opened his mouth and she saw the whole universe inside. None of you can do that either, can you? So she thought, oh my goodness, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But she remembered that her primary relationship with him is that he is her son. If the mother of Narendra Modi, is his mother alive? Okay, does she address him as the prime minister or does she call him a son? But is he still the prime minister? But to her, the relationship of him being her son is more important. Does that mean he's not the prime minister? No, both things are true simultaneously. We have to hold both these ideas in tension, that Krishna is God and that he has a sweet, loving relationship. But this is why when we study the Bhagavatam, we study the tattva first. We study the absolute nature of Krishna. We study how Krishna creates all the planets and how the wonderful things that Krishna does in his incarnations, especially as Vishnu. Then when he's a cowherd boy, it's something special. Otherwise, if we just talk about a cowherd boy, but we don't describe the special absolute qualities that he has, they don't seem to be quite as special. There are lots of cowherd boys. People have a stick and they herd calves and cows. So what? But if that person is a Supreme Personality of Godhead and he does that, now he's absolute and he's sweet. So there's a couple more of those special qualities. One is the Rupa Madhuri, where Krishna has such a beautiful form that it's even more beautiful than the other forms of God, like Narayan and Nrsimhadev and Lord Rama. In that form, Krishna saw his reflection in a jeweled, it was like on the wall, it was a jeweled wall, and he just rushed towards it. He had to be near it. Even his own reflection attracts him. And Krishna saw his reflection in the water, and he ran over to see that form. And when we see Krishna's form, it is as if we've never seen it again or before. Every time, even though we see it again, it's like we haven't seen it before. It's ever fresh and ever special. And this is why the gopis complain, Brahma, you dunce, why did you create our eyes that blink and we're not able to see Krishna continuously? And when Krishna goes out in the forest, they think of that form. They watch until the last dust is gone, and they think about that beautiful form of Krishna until Krishna and the cows come home. And then when Krishna and the cows come home, they watch that beautiful form come home. And they're so attracted to that beautiful form of Krishna that nothing else can be more beautiful. Think about this. If all the glorious and mighty manifestations in this world spring from just a spark of Krishna's splendor, how much more beautiful must be the whole fire of Krishna's beauty? If all these things, all of them together, are just a spark, the supreme whole must really be something beautiful. And the fourth one we didn't discuss yet has to do with a flute. It's called Venu Madhuri, where Krishna plays the sweet sound on his flute. He has several flutes, the Vamsi and the Venu. And when he plays this flute, fantastic things happen. Lord Brahma becomes astonished. The blue line from Lord Shiva disappeared, and his wife thought maybe this is an imposter. And the Jamuna River turned to milk, so the gopis went down to churn it into butter. And we see how special this is when Krishna has his form in Vrindavan. Because we read in this 10th canto, and also in the Krishna book, that at the occasion of the solar eclipse, the residents of Vrindavan, along with Radharani, went to meet Krishna and the residents of Dwarka at Kurukshetra. And Radharani is talking with one of her friends. She says, my old friend, she says, I met my old and dear friend Krishna on the field of Kurukshetra. He is the same Krishna, I am the same Radharani, and it is very, very wonderful. But yet I still wish to be by the bank of the Yamuna River, hearing Krishna play that sweet fifth note on his flute within that forest of Vrindavan. That's where she wants to be, hearing that sweet note. So Krishna seems to have many contradictions in his personality, but actually they just make his personality more sweet. He can be naturally very grave, humble, determined, highly qualified, chivalrous, and very attractive. And at the same time, Krishna can be naturally very funny, always appearing in full youthfulness, expert in joking, free from all cares and anxieties, domesticated and submissive to his lover, and he can also be very envious, proud, restless, and complacent. He can do all of these things at the same time. This is the nature of Krishna, because he is not subject to this law of contradiction. So Krishna performs these pastimes to let us in on something special. And like when he's going to perform this Govardhan Leela, is something different for everyone. When Krishna lifts up this hill, it is just like when Krishna was in the wrestling arena. They all saw him according to their relationship with Krishna. The cowherd boys see their friend. The gopis see their lover. The parents see a small child. The impersonalists see the Supreme Brahman. And they all get a chance to watch Krishna according to their own relationship. And we can get something out of this so we can relate to Krishna in their own special way. A few days ago was my mother's birthday, and my mother got to do legal work for Prabhupada. She wrote the book Trust, and she spent several times discussing this with Srila Prabhupada. And she said that of all the clients, she was a trust attorney for 64 years. She graduated Stanford Law School at 21. Prabhupada told her she was a Kshatriya. And so in the end of her life, after she'd had 2 strokes, I had read these Leelas to her about the Govardhan Leela and Indra bringing the rain. So they sent someone from the hospice group. So we see, even when someone's mind is not completely there and they're in a stroke, after 2 strokes, you can still apply this knowledge somehow. This is why it's good to read. I did a lot of reading of the Gita to her and Krishna book, and I've read ever since a lot. I have 2 jobs, chanting extra and reading extra. I let my children handle other business. So a woman came, and my mother said, "Are you an attorney?" And the woman was from the hospice group. She says, "No, why?" She said, "I need an attorney to go to the courthouse and file a claim against Indra to cease and desist with the rain. And then I need the attorney to file a property damage claim against Indra on behalf of the residents of Vrindavan." So like Prabhupada told her that she was a Kshatriya and she fought for Krishna, she wanted to do something for the residents of Vrindavan. So even in the stage where she couldn't sit up or walk or do anything, she still wanted to do something. So we can think in any condition, maybe we can't pretend to enter into Krishna's pastimes. We have to hold the great devotees on our head. We can't just imagine. It's like if you think, I want to become a patriot of India. So you show up in Delhi and you decide that you are the Minister of Defense. Trouble is, there's already a Minister of Defense. And by elevating your position beyond what your actual capabilities are, you simply create a disturbance and an offense. So we don't imagine that we're in Krishna's pastimes, but we do try to remember the pastimes, and we let Krishna reveal to us where he wants us to be. So of course we can concentrate on reading these pastimes. We can chant the names on beads and in front of the deities. There's 5 special ways that we can use what appears to be material to approach the spiritual world. 1 is the chanting of holy names. 2 is the deities. 3 is living in the Dham. 4 is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And which one did I miss? Did I miss the Dham? Yes, the Dham. Yes, see? I knew that. I just want to see if it did. The Dham. So are we in Vrindavan? We are. It looks that way, doesn't it? Are we in front of the deities? Can we chant the holy names? Can we read the Srimad Bhagavatam? Did we do all of that just now? Should we continue doing it? If it works, we need to keep doing it. We have to remember the things that work, we keep doing. The things that don't, we quit doing. So are there any questions or comments or corrections? Yes.
It's very obvious that you read a lot, because to retain and repeat all those qualities of Krishna, it takes, you have to actually bathe your mind in constantly hearing and reading about it, because you're not looking at a computer or taking notes or this or that. You just, by memory, from reading Bhagavatam on a regular basis with enthusiasm, it becomes part of your whole life. So I'm glad you're emphasizing the reading aspect.
Yes.
And we all have to increase that, right?
And it helps our brain when we're older from rotting. If you just sit in front of that box, they call it the one-eyed guru, and watch it. So many people, brains, they watch the same show over and over, and it's new because their brain is gone. But if we study, especially like we're reading Sanskrit and English, it really keeps the brain and the spiritual life alive. And especially if we found something good, like if Krishna's personality is more fantastic than anyone else's, wouldn't that be the best thing? When they go to see a sport, do you go to see the famous cricket player, or do you go to see, how about me? I'll give you my lecture on cricket. Cricket's a sport. There's 11 players. They have a ball, they have a bat, and they have a wicket. No idea exactly what a wicket looks like. That's my knowledge of cricket, right? Because I don't consider it as interesting as Krishna's pastimes. So we find that we keep the books with us. The other thing I do is I keep it in a Kindle, because I can take 50,000 pages of books in a small thing, and you try to remember some of these and chant, because we find Krishna consciousness is ever new. Any more questions or comments? Nothing else? Anyone disagree with part of those? I did sort of make the disagreement like, are these things true? Because they're true, but they're not the only thing that's true. That's where Krishna wants to broaden our mind to us. Is Krishna a coward boy? That's true, but it's not the only thing he is. Is Krishna God? Yes, but does that mean he's not a coward boy? So we have to open our mind to these possibilities, that Krishna has to be everything we can conceive of, plus more. And it behooves us to try to find out what that is by chanting his names and engaging in his service and just begging for mercy. Thank you all for being here. Hare Krishna.